Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to tackle something pretty intense. Sigmund Freud's concept of the death drive, or Thanatos. It's one of those ideas that might sound a little out there at first, but trust me, it gets really fascinating when we see how it might actually connect to, like, the world around us.
Absolutely. Thanatos is a challenging concept, there's no doubt. But it really does give us a new way to think about some of the darker aspects of human behavior that we often struggle to explain.
Right, like we all know Freud was big on the whole pleasure principle thing, human seeking pleasure and avoiding pain.
Exactly.
But then he runs into these cases that just don't fit.
Yeah, cases that really made him question his own theories.
Right.
Take repetition compulsion, for example. Why would someone repeatedly relive traumatic experiences?
Right.
Like a victim of abuse ending up in a similar relationship,
Right.
or a war veteran constantly reliving their battlefield trauma.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound very pleasurable.
No, not at all.
So
That's where Thanatos comes in, right? It's not just seeking pleasure or avoiding pain anymore. It's something deeper.
Precisely. Freud theorized that alongside our drive for life, which he called Eros, there's this opposing force, Thanatos, the death drive. It's an unconscious urge, something we're not even aware of, that pulls us towards a state of non-existence, a return to the stillness before life.
So wait, is he saying we all secretly want to die?
Not exactly. It's not a conscious desire for death,
Okay.
but more like a yearning for that ultimate calm, an absence of all the striving and tension that comes with being alive.
Okay.
Imagine complete stillness before birth. That's the kind of state Thanatos is pulling us towards.
Okay. I'm starting to get it. So it's not about wanting to die, but about this primal urge for kind of ultimate peace, even if that means non-existence.
You got it.
Okay.
And here's where things get really intriguing. Thanatos doesn't always manifest itself in a straightforward way. It can express itself inwardly and outwardly, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically.
So like self-destructive behavior could be Thanatos turned inwards?
Precisely.
Things like addiction or self-harm.
Precisely. Those can be seen as the death drive expressing itself internally.
Right.
Even depression, with its overwhelming sense of hopelessness and withdrawal, could be viewed through the lens of Thanatos.
And what about when Thanatos is directed outwards? What does that look like?
That's when we see aggression, violence, and cruelty towards others.
Oh, wow.
It's that destructive urge, but projected outwards,
Yeah.
potentially leading to some very harmful behaviors.
Yeah. It's not just limited to individuals, though, right? Freud even used Thanatos to try and understand large-scale things like wars and genocide.
Yes.
It's like a collective death drive playing out on a global scale.
Absolutely. Freud saw those societal-level destructions as evidence of Thanatos operating not just within individuals,
Right.
but also within entire societies.
Which is kind of terrifying.
Yes.
So we've got Eros, this life instinct pulling us towards creation and growth, and Thanatos, this death instinct pulling us towards destruction and stillness.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're constantly caught in this tug of war. Are we just doomed to be battling these forces forever?
Well, Freud didn't see Eros and Thanatos as a simple good versus evil battle.
Okay.
Instead, he believed they were in constant interaction, sometimes opposing each other,
Right.
sometimes even working together in complex ways.
So could you say that our creative urges, our drive to build and make things, are actually a way of channeling that destructive energy into something positive? Like Eros using art or music as a way to keep Thanatos in check?
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Think of artists who explore dark and challenging themes in their work.
Right.
They might be grappling with some pretty intense Thanatos-driven impulses,
Wow.
but they're expressing them in a way that creates something beautiful and meaningful.
So it's not about trying to eliminate Thanatos completely,
Right.
but more about understanding it and finding ways to manage its influence in our lives.
Exactly.
Now, I know Freud's idea of the death drive has been pretty controversial over the years.
Of course.
Not everyone agrees with him.
Sure.
And some of the criticism is understandable.
Of course. We can't pretend Thanatos is a scientifically proven fact.
Right.
In the same way we understand other psychological concepts.
Yeah.
It's a complex and abstract idea.
But even if we don't have concrete scientific evidence, can the concept of Thanatos still be valuable? Can it help us understand the world around us, even if it's just a metaphorical framework?
Absolutely. Think of it as a lens through which we can view certain behaviors and phenomena that are difficult to explain otherwise.
Okay.
It offers a different perspective
Yeah.
that can lead to some insightful observations.
Take addiction, for example. How else do we explain the self-destructive nature of addictive behaviors?
Yeah.
The pleasure principle alone doesn't seem to cut it.
You're right, the idea of a death drive, whether literal or metaphorical, can help us grapple with aspects of ourselves and our world that don't always fit neatly into rational boxes.
Right.
And we'll explore those in more detail in the next part of our deep dive.
This is definitely making me think differently about things. So, to be continued.
Indeed. There's much more to uncover as we delve further into the concept of Thanatos and its implications for both individuals and society as a whole.
All right, so we've laid the groundwork for understanding Thanatos, this primal, unconscious drive that might be pulling us towards a sort of primordial stillness. Now, I'm curious, how does this concept play out in our modern world? Are there like specific areas where we see Thanatos at work?
Absolutely, and I think one of the most striking examples, as you alluded to earlier, is addiction.
Yeah. It feels like addiction is almost a textbook example of self-destructive behavior. But how does Thanatos fit into that picture? What's going on beyond just the pleasure principle?
Well, think about it. At some point in addition, the pleasure fades, the negative consequences pile up, yet the individual continues the behavior. Thanatos offers a way to understand that compulsion, that drive that goes beyond seeking pleasure or avoiding pain.
So it's not just that the pleasure outweighs the pain anymore, it's something deeper driving that behavior.
Exactly. Imagine it like this. Addiction at its core could be an attempt to numb oneself, to escape the anxieties and stresses of existence, even if that escape leads to further physical or emotional pain.
It's like using self-destruction as a way to create a kind of artificial stillness, a way to shut out the overwhelming noise of life, even if only temporarily.
You're getting at the heart of it. It's a way to create a sense of control in the face of chaos, even if that control is ultimately an illusion, a self-defeating one.
That's pretty profound. But we were talking earlier about Thanatos manifesting on a societal level too, and I can't help but think about the environmental crisis we're facing, all this destruction we're inflicting on the planet. Could that be Thanatos at work on a larger scale?
It's a disturbing thought, but one worth exploring. How else do we explain our collective inaction in the face of a threat as existential as climate change? Why do we prioritize short-term comfort over long-term survival? Thanatos, with its pull towards oblivion, offers a chillingly plausible explanation.
It's almost like we're engaging in a form of collective self-sabotage, as if a part of us on a deep unconscious level doesn't want to survive, doesn't want to face the challenges of the future.
And that raises a profound question. If we as a species are capable of such large-scale self-destructive behavior, what does that say about our capacity to address the very problems we've created? Where do we find the hope, the will, to overcome this seemingly inherent drive towards destruction?
It's a tough question, but I guess it goes back to what we were discussing earlier about the interplay between Eros and Thanatos. If there's this death drive pulling us towards the abyss, there must also be something pushing us towards survival, towards growth and creation.
Precisely. And this is where understanding Thanatos becomes crucial, not as a deterministic force that seals our fate, but as a challenge, a shadow we need to understand and grapple with. Because it's in recognizing our potential for self-destruction that we can truly begin to harness our capacity for creation, for finding solutions, for building a future that affirms life rather than negates it.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of these primal urges, we're not completely powerless. We still have the capacity to make choices, to consciously choose which drive we nurture, which path we take.
Exactly. And those choices, both individual and collective, ultimately determine our destiny. It's not about denying the existence of Thanatos, but about recognizing its influence and actively choosing to cultivate Eros, to foster those life-affirming impulses that push us towards growth, connection, and ultimately a future worth striving for.
So we've talked about addiction, we've touched upon the environmental crisis, but I have a feeling there are many more ways, perhaps subtler ways, that Thanatos might be influencing our lives.
Well, absolutely. And that's what we'll explore further in the final part of our deep dive. Because understanding the nuances of the death drive is not just about recognizing the grand sweeping narratives, but also about becoming aware of the subtle ways it might be shaping our everyday choices and perceptions.
So we've been talking about Thanatos on this grand scale addiction, the fate of the planet. But you mentioned there are subtler ways this death drive might be showing up in our lives. What are some examples of that?
Well, think about risk-taking behavior. Why are some people drawn to activities that put their lives in danger, like extreme sports or reckless driving, even something like gambling? It's not always just about the thrill. Could there be a deeper unconscious pull towards danger, a sort of flirtation with oblivion.
Yeah, it's like they're testing the limits, seeing how close they can get to the edge without actually going over.
Exactly. And it's not just physical risks. Either consider emotional risk-taking, like sabotaging relationships or pushing away loved ones, making choices that jeopardize our own happiness. Could there be an element of Thanatos there? A subconscious desire to create chaos and disruption in our lives?
Almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy of destruction.
It's a fascinating paradox.
Yeah.
These behaviors might seem counterintuitive to survival, but through the lens of Thanatos, they start to make a different kind of sense.
Yeah, this is making me rethink a lot of things. It's like we're surrounded by these subtle signs of Thanatos, but we often don't even notice them.
That's the nature of the unconscious. It works in mysterious ways, influencing our thoughts, feelings, and actions, without us even realizing it.
Yeah.
But by becoming aware of these subtle manifestations of the death drive, we can start to understand ourselves on a much deeper level.
So if we accept that Thanatos is this underlying force in human nature, this pull towards a kind of primordial stillness, does that mean we're all just doomed to be pulled towards darkness? Is there any hope for overcoming this drive?
Not at all. Remember, Freud also gave us Eros, the life instinct. And just as Thanatos can manifest in subtle ways, so can Eros think about the everyday acts of kindness and compassion, the people who dedicate their lives to helping others, to creating art, to building communities. These are all expressions of Eros, the drive towards life connection and creation.
So it's not a battle we're destined to lose. We have the power to choose which drive we cultivate, which one we feed.
Exactly. It's about being aware of both forces within us and consciously choosing to nurture the life-affirming impulses. It's about finding healthy outlets for our darker emotions, channeling them into creative pursuits, acts of service, or simply taking care of ourselves and those we love.
This has been an incredible deep dive. It's definitely given me a lot to think about.
Well, I hope it's given you a new perspective on some of the complexities of human behavior, perhaps even a renewed sense of agency in your own life.
It definitely has, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way. So, as always, we want to hear from you. What resonated with you about this episode? What examples of Thanatos, subtle or grand, have you noticed in your own life? And what are some ways that you consciously choose to cultivate Eros, to nurture the life-affirming forces within you? Leave us a comment and share your thoughts. Until next time, keep diving deep.